Spencer, my good fellow.
Yes?
I'm a sophisticate now.
Oh, yeah?
I have signed up for masterclass.
Hmm.
I've been taking Salman Rushdie's masterclass. I'm 10 episodes in.
How long is it?
Like 27 episodes or something. Lessons, not episodes.
Well, how long is each lesson?
I think the longest one I saw was 20 minutes. Most are about 8 to 12.
Oh,
I like it because when I'm on my lunch at work, I could watch like a couple. Goddamn heater kicked on. You're going to have to deal with it, folks. Because
now,
we're sophisticates. We need to be warm.
Do you forever have those, or do you only have those for like the month? Or
it's a year.
A year?
It's a year subscription. It's like $180. It's a little bit stiff. So far though,
just for him or for like all the master?
You get everything.
Oh, you get all everybody's master classes?
Yeah, you get everyone. So I'm gonna watch the Neil Gaiman, Dean Koontz, probably what the fuck is his name? Not Patrick. Patterson. James Patterson. Apparently, I remember Terry from the Dead Robot said it was like one of the best master classes on how to like sell a book and stuff. So
you should check out. I think David Lynch has a master class too.
He's got one on movie making.
But I'm sure you could probably still find some interesting things out of that one, with
there's still going to be storytelling and stuff, so yeah, I would imagine. The Salman Rushdie one, it's been very helpful, but I will say I'm a terrible writer.
Yeah.
I am awful because he reads this was one of my early works that was an awful failure, and he reads it and I was like, oh, I never wrote anything even nearly as good as that paragraph you just said. You fuck. I never read Salman Rushdie, but I would go ahead and say he's literature.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't he more of a like a highbrow?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about. I actually planned this episode really before I even watched those. I just started watching them, so I don't want to really take whatever he was saying because he talks about storytelling, characters. Like those are things I was already gonna kind of talk about. But he had very interesting ideas that I think you would like too about like narration styles, such as like the mirrored style where you tell one person's story, but then maybe somebody in the 1800s who's in your story has a similar experience. Like, I think he used the example of a mother and daughter present day fighting, but then you also have like a flashback where it's similar, the mother-daughter fighting, but whatever those characters, maybe they resolve it differently. Like, you could do compare, contrast. You could do all kinds of things with that. And he just had a lot of really helpful things about narration styles. And one thing I really liked was he talked about orator style, which is something I've never really done a lot of, whereas you're the narrator. Kind of like Tom Sawyer, where Mark Twain was kind of telling you the story.
Yeah. Because
I always thought, well, that'd be an easy way to go. I never thought about it in terms of you can really have a lot of play with it. So say you have you're telling the story, you could add your own personal quips and be kind of funny or dramatic or whatever because you're the one telling the story. Yeah. It'd be like how you tell a story to your buddies. You have more play, whereas if you just do like a third-person narration, you kind of have to tell the story, but you can't add your personal author voice in there too much because that'll, affect the people. Be like, well, who the fuck's telling the story? What's happening? It's confusing. So I like things like that. So
that could be a very slippery slope, depending on how and how much you use it.
Yeah, and then he also goes into like setting his character, different character development strategies, just a bunch of really cool shit I like. So you'll have to come check that out sometime.
Well, now that you have these fancy new like couch chairs.
It's called a love seat.
You're never
double recliner.
Yeah, you just come down and you like get up in the middle of the night to get like a drink of water or something. You hear like a rustling sound down, and they're like, "What is that?"
Spencer like a gremlin, just leave me alone. I have spent a lot of time down here since getting that. That thing they put in a box. That's a big box. A whole couch. I never seen that. A whole couch in a box. Interesting. Anyway, going back to me sucking as a writer, though, that made me, which I was kind of doing already before that because I've been struggling with my one story I'm working on. I should have been done with it 2 months ago by now. It started making me think, like I was up all night the other night, just couldn't sleep. I'm thinking about all my failures and like all the things I wanted to accomplish. Like, I want to get published in this magazine, wanted to do this, wanted to do that. None of it's come true. So I've just been struggling with feelings of being a terrible, terrible failure of a writer who will never make it anywhere and die poor in the gutter.
And then people will find your stuff.
Hopefully somebody likes it after I'm dead and cannot give a shit anymore. You fucks. You fucking jabronis. Fucking muckluck.
Ooh.
I don't know what that means. I heard it once on something. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. How about you?
Pretty much the same.
The taste of bitter failure in your mouth, or just the daunting reality of this is what I need to become a successful writer, and I don't think I'm going to reach it.
Yeah, both.
It sucks.
Yeah, because we all had I'm sure we both had the New Year, new goal set. Slate is clean.
Yeah.
Let's do this shit. And the shit has not.
I don't want to get too depressing on just the cold open.
Let's save that for the main episode.
Yeah, but my words have not been beautiful or sobering or anything that elicits any kind of feeling. They're just not good. I don't know. I thought I was on a good streak there where I started hitting them up. Like the first 6,000 words of the story I was working on were pretty good. I was enjoying it. I was like, all right. Then it just started to fall apart. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck's going on. My mind's also, because I've been wanting to write that, start on the novel I want to write, and my mind's been I'm trying to pull it back. Like, no, finish this fucking story, and then you can go do the novel. And I know I think in past episodes you've told me, like, hey, maybe work on this, and then you can work on. But if I do that, I'm not going to go back to that story, I don't think.
Yeah, and you've had enough of those stories that you haven't got back into yet.
And it just probably never will. So I don't know. I just want the first draft done. I get the first fucking draft done, and then I feel like it'll be easier. I could finish it whenever I want. Once you get the first draft done, you can go back anytime. It's usually better to take a good chunk of, time off.
But it's after. It's done, not while you're working on it.
No, when you're working, that hurts. It hurts when I pee just because all the pent-up aggression and rage and self-loathing, it just pushes out just oil and vinegar and salt water. Salt water's kind of pee anyway, right?
I know you're not supposed to drink it.
Too salty? I don't know. I don't know where we're at. We'll start the episode and be less depressing, right?
No.
So anyway, I hate my... penis. That's how the episode starts.
We just get over ourselves, can we? Anytime we have a chance to take the high road and be mature, civil adults, talking about adultly things.
The fact that you use the word adultly, kind of seals our fate there. That's we're never gonna take the high road. We take the road with the most quest.
Yeah.
For those listening, if you are listening and you haven't turned off immediately after penis, this is the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Egyptian earlobe eviscerator church. It had to be E, and I didn't know what went with eviscerator. Like, what part of the body starts with the E other than earlobe? You can't think of one, can you? Somebody out there knows one, and they think we're stupid. But you know what? Shut up, smart person. Anyway, we're talking about... What are we talking about?
I don't know. You're the one that comes up with the ideas for the episode.
But I told you the idea.
I don't...
You don't remember? That was not even 10 minutes ago. I said, hey, Spencer, here's what we're going to do.
Look, can you not remember it now?
I can't. All I can think about is penis. My penis. So anyway, I was walking down the street, right? And I saw... No, we're talking about how to craft a story, right?
Something like that.
I had a better way of saying that. But yeah, we're talking about how to craft a story of such things. Stupid things. Things we shouldn't talk about anymore.
We the elements of the story.
That's the word. The elements of crafting a good story. Spencer, you're on the ball. Remind me of that when I need to save this file for the title. We're not looking at a list or anything. We're just going by our experiences, so feel free to do it completely different if that's how you feel at home.
And let us know.
Yeah, what your style is. But for me, we'll talk about our styles and how we go into a story. Because, when you're crafting a story, it starts off usually in your head, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how do you get into it? For me, it usually is just a random idea.
Yeah.
I see something in my daily life, I watch a movie, anything that just sparks a little thought, and I'm like, hey, you know what would be cool? And then that's usually how I get the ball rolling. What about you?
Normally like the same. It's just like a weird, just a weird nugget. Even just like
It could even be like a name or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think of a character name and it just sparks a whole thing that could go with that.
Like, I don't know about you, but like whenever you were when you were a kid and you were on the school bus on the way to school and just looking out the window, and I always be like wondering, like, other people in the car, I'd be like, I wonder what are they doing today? What are, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, that can, like, that's kind of like a whole, you know,
Sparks your imagination, gets it
yeah,
rolling.
or just like it's either that or like I come up with like an aspect of the story that I really think is interesting, like a character or kind of like an overall kind of like a plot idea, like, what if, you know, some weird thing happened? Like, you know what I mean? What about if everybody just had the third eye in the middle of their forehead overnight? Like, well, what would that be like? You know, just some kind of random, like, just half of a thing that to go off of.
I think most writers are like that. I don't even know if there's another way to be, honestly. But this is where we'll probably, you know, take different paths. When you actually get to writing that story, or just starting, where do you start? For me, it's usually because I go mostly off a name or a title or something that I pop in my head, and I actually craft a story around that. And the first thing I usually do is the setting. Whereas I feel like you probably do character, right?
Well, I'm gonna say it kind of varies a little bit. Like, I think for me, it depends on like whatever that nugget that I start off with. If it's that character that I like, oh, that guy is cool, then yeah, I build a world around that character. Mm-hmm. But if my initial idea is like this cool kind of setting, and then it's like, all right, now I need to make people to interact and to put into this setting.
Right.
So I think a little bit it kind of varies on the story and that initial story idea.
Mm-hmm. I like to get the setting down, even if it's just one scene. It might, because my story might not be set, like most of my stories aren't usually set in just one spot, and that's where it takes place. And I don't mean one spot as like a room or something, like, you know, a state, a country, like just one main area. I kind of tend to write a lot. Usually the setting's not like the main focus of my stories, but I like to have the setting first and foremost, just so you know where it's taking place, and then I expand on that. Without the setting idea, for me, it's like my characters are just aimless. Like, I need a place for them. And I mean, that sounds kind of generic. You need a place for your characters to be. But as the years have gone by, I've worked on making the setting more of a character, more of a main feature, because it's easy just to, you know, he's in the library, now he's in his ex's house, and not, like, just kind of go through and maybe brief descriptions. But if you can give that setting, say an old rustic house, if you can actually give that feeling, and you can hear the walls breathing and the, you know, the pipes groaning and things like that, you can give it, you can elicit feeling from the house and make it its own character almost, and that, I feel like, sucks the reader in. And I've been exploring that more, where you maybe either you want the reader to want to get out of that setting immediately, like, oh man, this place is fucking terrible, I hope this character gets out of there. Even though it might be a character heavy piece where what's happening to them is more important than where they are, you still want that setting to be like a secondary focus, but have its moment to be like The Shining's a good example. Yeah. The Overlook Hotel is the main character, but it's not.
Well, the thing that I always hear that whenever for an example for this kind of thing is like Gotham from Batman. Gotham is its very own, like, that city is its own character. It has its own history. It has a lot to do with how characters interact with inside of its walls and stuff like that.
Versus like a Metropolis where what is it, Emerald City? Like the Arrow universe is kind of like in between Superman City and Batman City. Yeah, as far as like a dark, gritty nature. Yeah. But like you have Superman City, it's like, you know, it's a major setting, but it doesn't really have, at least to me, I never really had much like feeling. Like it's not, that's just where things take place.
Yeah.
Versus Gotham, where that's like you said, like that it shapes the characters. Like, can you imagine the Joker in a different city?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he could be in a different city, but if Joker grew up in a different city, he wouldn't be the Joker probably. Like that's the kind of feeling.
Batman literally wouldn't be Batman without Gotham.
Yeah, so you can have the setting be major, and this will go into our next thing about character motivations and stuff. You can be how the character came to be, and you don't even really have to focus as much on it. Because some writers, I feel like they go too hard into the setting. Yeah. Like everything's just about the. I'm trying to think of.
Well, I think another good example for the setting being its own character is like, say, if you're like Shawshank Redemption, or just any kind of prison story. If you do it right, and if you give that prison a certain kind of feel and like kind of dread, or I think any kind of thing where like a character is stuck in a place.
Well, you can make a prison just be a generic cold, like a jail, like that's just where they are, or you can make it like a suffocating, claustrophobic type of place, like where you really feel trapped, and as the reader you feel trapped with the prisoners, or you could just have it as you gotta escape from prison or whatever the story is, and it's not that. But like Shawshank Redemption, I mean, that was a shitty prison.
Yeah,
you wanted to get out. The guards are hard. The food probably sucks. The sexy ladies on the walls that you drove behind.
Yeah,
go in a shit pipe. But moving on from setting, because that's usually where I start, and then I work on how can like we were talking about how the characters, and this is what I need to work on more. It was like how we talked about Batman being Batman because of Gotham. I want my characters to be who they are because of the setting. Where I'm at in my writing, I tend to usually just focus on how they are at the moment because of the setting. So, you're in a desert, you're going to be hot, miserable, that kind of stuff. But I would like it to be more detailed than that.
Yeah.
But as far as characters, where do you start with characters? Because I know a lot of authors start with the looks. I actually start with the motivations.
Yeah.
Of what the character, why are they doing what they're doing, and what is their end goal. I usually focus on the end goal before I even focus on the motivation.
And you just kind of go backwards?
Yeah, so I got a character who's got to get a gem out of a cave. Why does he care about this gem so much? Why is he going to risk his life for the gem? Then there's his motivations.
Does he have to save somebody? Does he need money for it? Is there somebody like,
if he does save somebody, why would he save them? Why is that in his character? I focus more on that. Whereas a lot of, especially like indie authors I've read, it seems like they always focus, the guy's rugged good looks or his hair. I mean, those are important, the character traits, but I don't, like some of the best authors I've read and the best books I've read, the characters are kind of just generic, and like their looks aren't described very well.
That or they slowly get described
over
to
time.
You throughout the because I know like there's been like a couple times like even like I'll read a Stephen King book and it's like a couple chapters in and you find out a new way like the person's hair looks different.
Yeah.
And it's like that you don't really find that out until like the third chapter, even though that they've been in the first two.
What I think was an interesting way, not necessarily interesting, like a way I liked doing it. Like someone who did a character detail without being too ham-fisted or even dragging it out was like Andy Weir in Artemis.
Yeah.
You get a complete visual of the girl, but I never really felt like it was something that it was a focus, really. It just kind of came out organically. I just use him because he's not like a traditional writer. I feel like a lot of even like mainstream writers who have been writing for a long time either are really good at it or have trouble on character design and stuff. And that goes in past conversations we had about, do you draw out your character, like physically draw them? Do you write down, because a lot of people, I think even Salman Rushdie said in that masterclass, he didn't say it in like the RPG style, coming up with the whole backstory, but come up with kind of a backstory for the character that might never be used and different things. But he didn't even mention like really drawing out the character to have every single physical, because when I read something, I kind of want to be able to, depending on who it is either John Wick style where I, kind of more of a generic person that I could just superimpose myself on.
Yeah.
Depending on the story. Or I can just kind of imagine what the character looks like and you give me some visual, cues.
Yeah.
But I can kind of picture who they are and I can come up with what they look like. And then they could be more of a hero that, if they're the hero or whatever the character is, they could be more of my vision, which is always fun. versus if the author completely details it and then, well, this is what they look like.
Yeah, because that's the tricky thing. You want to be detailed, but you want to keep it kind of loose, so like it can kind of even be a little bit different for each person reading it. Like you were saying, like you gotta have it. If you have a little bit more loose, it's easier for the reader to see themselves each in the characters if you go with this strict, like, detailed outline of how the guy looks.
And I think that is kind of why, at least in what I've read, you see the antagonist is usually described very well.
Yeah.
So the villain is usually more fleshed out, detailed wise than the protagonist might be, because who's going to want to identify with, like, you're not going to superimpose yourself on the villain. So I feel like you might kind of want to know, they got the scar eye, the fucking toupee, whatever it is. They detail it better. Also going with the characters, so we cover design and motivations a little bit. Is there anything else you do with your character before you go on to the other elements of the story?
No, I don't. I can't really think of anything yet, because once you get the character kind of mapped out a little bit, and you get that back history you might never use, and how they might look and stuff like that. Other than like
character traits like speech patterns, and stuff.
And other than like future plans, you might want to be like, so and so loses a hand at some point, or dies. Like, you know what I mean? To just try to keep that stuff straight, so you don't forget it. When you get to that point.
I ask you this question because this is something we both have not had a lot of experience in. There is another character element, or another writing element with characters that we don't focus on. How do they interact with other characters?
Yeah.
We don't, and a lot of people I know don't really talk about how they flesh that out. Because if you think about your real life, you don't talk to your mom the way you talk to your brother.
Yeah.
You don't talk to your brother the way you talk to your girlfriend. Like,
yeah.
It's different.
Yep.
Characters in your story
except
are the exact same.
Except here on the podcast, here on the podcast, we're 100% true and real with you people. Can you dig it, brother?
Can you dig it? Spencer does. I'm completely dishonest. This is even my real voice. I'm gonna insert that from Eric Andre's show when Hannibal Buress is like, "This is my real voice," and it was like a robot or something, like just randomly. I'm gonna put that. This is my real voice. But that's a thing. That's a topic I've never really actually heard addressed. I don't think is how your characters interact with each other.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing a novel, especially, you're probably gonna have a lot of characters for the most part. Like most novels have a good bit of characters, and how does your character interact with a bum on the street? Again, going back to the backstory you might never use. Think of your character in that form. How would they treat the waiter who spills their drink in their lap? How do they treat their wife when they burn the pot roast?
Yeah.
You have to think of these things just so you could better flesh out your character in your head. And I don't want to shit on anybody, but I feel like a lot of indie authors, they don't flesh out their character. And I'm guilty of it as anybody. Like, I don't flesh out my characters enough because I haven't written stories. Like, I haven't written novels where it would come up.
Yeah.
Because short stories, it's hard to really flesh out a character that much. But
especially if you're going to have multiple characters.
Yeah, but there's plenty of work. And even famous writers, we've read work where you're like, this character doesn't have much of a personality, or this character...
I don't give a shit about this person.
Yeah, going back to the John Wick thing, he just seems like, kind of an everyman. It's not... Because John Wick, not John Wick specifically, obviously. I'm talking about, Keanu Reeves as an actor playing John Wick is... And why he, in the Matrix too, with Neo, it's because Keanu Reeves, when he's playing these characters, he's not the greatest actor.
Yeah. He's
more of an everyman. You can just kind of picture yourself in that his shoes.
Yeah.
Which is actually a hard thing to do visually, like a movie, but he does it. You kind of forget you're watching Keanu Reeves. You're just thinking, oh, this is me, or this is somebody. You put your hero fantasies on.
Yeah.
In novels, though, I don't like that. I don't like characters who just come off as kind of bland in the way they
unless if that's the clear objective for that character, if that's that character's supposed to just be this Manila, just plain Jane, annoying kind of
I just want my character, my protagonist, to interact with people differently. Because that's one thing that's become more and more of a pet peeve of mine. The main character, and often it's like the funny guy or something. You're not funny in every fucking situation. I'm sorry. Like that kind of irks me now. Like it used to be when you're younger. You're like, he's the funny guy. Huh? But I'm sorry, if somebody's gonna shoot you in the head or something, you're not making a fucking joke.
Yeah.
Like there's serious situations that could be ruined by the funny guy, and that goes with the overly serious guy. Like not everybody's overly serious. Like there's fucking character arcs and different character types, but there's also people who do different things.
To circle back to the setting, like, you know what I mean? Maybe the funny guy, he has this moment to be serious, like has this serious moment that he has to do a thing or give a speech or something.
Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, for instance, he has his moments where he has to be serious.
But then there's also those moments where the serious guy can crack like a one-liner,
and then makes it way more funny.
Yeah,
way more funny.
My example of that always is the Justice League movie with Batman and Superman. There's a scene where Superman first comes back, and he's like, "Oh wow, it must have," because he turns to Batman, and he's like, "Oh, it must have been really bad if you brought me back to life." And Batman goes, "Oh, well, I don't not hate not hate you," and like that is terrible.
Terrible.
What needed to be done is all Batman had to do is go. Urgh. He just had a grunt or make like a guttural noise, and it would have the same effect. It would have been hilarious. You want to know why it's been hilarious? Because they've been doing that shit in comics for years, and it works. Like,
and it's not breaking character.
Yeah,
when he says, "Oh, I do not hate you," like, Batman would never fucking say that. That's stupid. You got to stay with your character type too. Next up. After you have the setting down and the characters down, their motivations, how they interact, you have all that stuff fleshed out. Where do you go, Spencer? What do you do?
Plot. Was that your next step, or am I skipping something else in your head?
You're skipping something.
Okay.
Actually, the plot can kind of go to any time, obviously, because it's the fucking plot of the story. Yeah. You have to have the story idea. When we come up with the initial story, for me, I just kind of assume plot. But we should probably actually talk about that. You do have your plot, like what's going to happen. You might not have it fleshed out when you have your initial idea. I never fucking do usually. But it is a good idea. Whether you're a discovery writer or a strict outliner or in between, it's good to know kind of where you're going. But what I was going to say, because this is one also that amateur writers never focus on and they get into trouble a lot. Narration style. And more specifically, the writing mechanics you're going to use. Is it going to be first person, third person, those things? And are you going to stick with it? Past tense, future tense. Future tense would be kind of cool. No, past tense or present tense. Future tense, everything's happening in the future. The elusive second person.
Yeah.
You going to do that? So when do you go into that idea? Because I've been thinking more and more on that lately versus my actual stories and my characters and stuff. I've been almost thinking... First, how am I, like, after the idea...
How are you going to tell it?
How am I going to tell it? Like, I think we were talking about in the cold open, about, like, the oratory style of, like, Mark Twain or something. That kind of got my mind rolling on the story I was going to work on now. I was like, would I like to tell this story? Would that style fit with this story? What style is going to fit with your story?
Yeah.
I'm telling more of a serious story with fantastical elements. I don't think an oratory style would work very well, so I'm probably just going to go with third-person style. No, like, strict narrator, I guess. That's something I have to look into more because that's something I never really think about. Like, who's telling this story or how's this story being told? Because if you look at less successful writers in their lifetime, like H.P. Lovecraft, he always did we talked about this with the Dracula episodes. It's always like journal entries and newspaper entries.
Yeah, a lot of the, especially like a lot of the literary stuff is always...
They focus more on who was telling the story or how it was being told. Like they just couldn't have the story being told.
Yeah.
Versus now, I feel it's more acceptable just to tell the story.
Yeah. And
the reader just kind of ignores, like you don't really... Because I notice I don't really focus on it anymore when I'm reading. Is like... Unless it's specifically told, like, this is who's telling the story.
Yeah, like, unless if they make it known, one of the characters in the story is telling the story.
Yeah. It's just a story I'm just reading. But that's something you didn't get a lot back in older literature. But as far as narration style goes, I think we both generally stick to...
third person. I know I stick with a lot of third person just because that seems like the easy default
third person, past tense, and
sometimes first person depending on the story.
Yeah.
If I think it could, especially if it like, I think that's like especially if you're having like a wisecracky kind of like.
That's better usually first person.
Yeah.
But with the narration style itself, like I said, that's something I've been working on, like focusing on more. But I'm sure, you probably haven't really thought much about that. Like when you're going into your story ideas, like you worry more about setting and character and stuff. But I really think it's really important to focus on how you're going to tell the story, because you could have the coolest story, but if you tell it in the wrong way, people aren't going to give a shit.
Yeah.
And it's not just grammatical errors or tense issues or anything like that. You could tell it properly, from a writing mechanics and stuff, but if it's just not the right narration style for that.
Yeah, because I know sometimes I've been reading something and I'm just being like, well, how is anybody supposed to know about this story, depending on what it is?
Yeah. So I think that's something we could both do better in looking into and kind of experimenting too. I think because that's one thing we both haven't really dove into was telling different narration styles. Like we both done obviously the first person. I think I might have written some stories that had some letter elements or something, like told in a letter or something, like a short story. See, I'm trying to think. I don't.
Well, I
don't know what other kind of styles I've used.
I had that. I did that one short story that it seemed like it was being narrated, but at the end it turned out to be somebody reading a note.
Yeah.
And then it jumped to for the last couple chapters jumped to the person reading that perspective.
Well, you can make a story really interesting just by the way you tell it, by jumping around like that. Now you have to do that in a certain way.
Yeah. Cuz just to kind of illustrate that different, think of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, jumping around.
Yeah, the way he tells a story and
because there's linear and then you can do a non-linear and
linear.
We did that. We did this before. Why do I fuck that word up? I'm gonna say linear. I like it better.
Yeah.
You know why? And this is gonna sound really stupid because it just shouldn't make any sense. Every time I think of the word linear, I think of, for some reason, that's one of the only words that actually comes to me visually when I go to say it, it's spelled out. And I think of Lenore from Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, okay.
So I always, the Raven, Lenore. So I just want to say linear. I don't know why. That's weird. But yes, there's linear and non-linear. And
which can be very tricky. You can, that's where you got to give Quentin Tarantino credit, because like Reservoir Dogs, you could have fucked that up very easily so many different ways on the way you told that story.
Well, the style I like a lot in fiction, and I think this is what I'm going to do for my first novel. We touched on this in another episode, I don't remember which one, where every other chapter, every few chapter, you focus on one character, and then what I was going to do is, two characters together get split up, and then now you have chapters where it's one character, chapters where it's another character, and then maybe at the end or the climax or something they get back together, so you converge the story. I like story elements like that where you can converge and split up the story. You can tell multiple stories within a story.
I'm gonna say that's one thing that I think Stephen King does very well, is having his cast the characters and able to
have their own lives and own adventures and then come back.
Or just telling to go back to The Shining. How many times in that book do you get a scene? And then you get that scene from each major character's point of view,
which is very cool
at different parts in time in the stories.
Yeah, so you actually jump back. You'll read something and then later jump back to that scene, but from Danny's perspective or something.
And it puts a whole new spin on it, and just even the best. And I know I always get you on, try to nag you into reading it, but especially if you want that characters who are all over the place that come together, is the Stand.
The Stand.
Stand.
We're not gonna talk about The Stand. I haven't read it. We're not gonna talk about it. We will talk about It though. I didn't read It, and obviously I will go by the movies, but I'm pretty sure it's similar in how he used a mirroring style where you had the kids and what they went through, and then the adults, you had the same, like, it was mirrored. Like, how do they go through it? What was the kid's Eddie with the inhaler? Yeah. Well, when he's an adult, he's like, oh, the inhaler was fake, or, you know, it was just water.
Yeah, the book is very much like the original TV series, to where it jumps back and forth. But I do like how with the movies, how they kind of just, they told they told the kids the kid's story, and then came back for the adult stories, and like, you know, reached back when it was appropriate, when they needed to.
Two other things I like in stories, and they kind of coincide: flashbacks and stories within the story. I like which Stephen King's obviously good for, is when you can have a flashback, and I'm going to use Haruki Murakami because he does this very excellently in a lot of his work, where sometimes he does a flashback, but it's its own big story that's like really awesome. He also does the story within a story, which is a cool way to do narration, is because you can have your third person story, but then if you have a character tell another character a story, like, you know, talk about one time they got fucking beaten up by a monk, and you can also bring the story they tell. You could bring it,
or even have the that character could be telling the other character like what was previously happening in the story that you were writing, and then throw that character's like spin or his personality on it. Like, you know, it's always like the game tells.
Change it up, like Mystery does that. Like Mystery, you know, little elements will change in the story, and then it's like, well, why does he remember it differently? Yeah. You could do things like that. But what I like is when you have like a character is telling a story, and then you get really invested in that story, and preferably have a conclusion of that little story. I hate when they leave you with like a cliffhanger in that story that they never get back to because it's minor subplot. But I like when that story has something to do with the major, you know, the main story. So, but skipping that for now, going back to just the narration style. So you can have just a third person normal story, but then now all of a sudden you can play around with the oratory style, where it's like you as the author, but you're actually the character telling the story. So you can have the personal spins of, man, that wasn't that wild when he said this, and then, like, you know, you can add more humor elements or whatever you want, but you can really play around with that. And I think a good story has a lot of these elements thrown in, where it's not just point A to point Z, just kind of, this is your typical story, this is how it goes. I think if you can throw in the little curveballs, have minor stories inside. If you really want, you can go Inception style, and you can have a story within a story within a story. You can have your story that you're telling, and then you can have a character in that story tell another character a story, and the characters in that person's story also tell a story, and all of a sudden you don't know what the fuck's happening.
You know what this reminds me of, and I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know, but this reminds me of what I've heard of basically like what like Tenet is.
I did not see that. I heard that's nuts. I heard that was terrible too.
Yeah.
And you also can't hear. I watched a whole video on how you just can't hear any of the dialogue because he just made everything so loud.
And so I had a thing about that movie that we could use for a cold open one time.
Well, maybe we should actually watch the movie.
Well, no, it's a thing that I heard about. It's like, well, screw it, I'll just go now since we're kind of, and it kind of furthers into this of things you could do. But like, so the main character, his name is Protagonist.
That's terrible. I hate it.
Yeah. So that's why I figured the cold open I could tell you that, and then you just
bring that up in the next episode in the cold open, because I'll forget. So then I can really rip into that and get very angry.
But I mean, that also kind of that's a style thing, which I think is something we could talk about. That kind of falls in crafting and stuff. Is like the style. Do you want to be a really pretentious douchebag who names your main character Protagonist?
Well, here's another thing, folks. You can play around with these different elements all you want, but just know they could fail miserably.
Yeah.
It could work, or it could be fucking awful and everybody hates you and they want you dead because your story was so badly told. So just know that is something that can happen.
Because there's this comic book writer, Jonathan Hickman, and he's known for having these grand, huge in scope stories that need like 3 or 4 books and weave in and out and things like that. And like, I normally don't like a lot of his stuff. He did like a Fantastic Four run. That was like his first big thing that I liked. But then he did Avengers that made me stop reading Avengers. Ooh. And now he's doing the X-Men, and it's just really like, he's trying to be too cute, I feel like. Yeah. And it's just like, if it wasn't for the fact that it was the X-Men that I like the X-Men, so I'm trying to stick through it. But yeah, it's just you got to be careful because you don't want to be too cutesy and so too clever, and it doesn't work.
Here's a piece of advice: even if you're a really smart person, you never want to come across as smarter than your audience, because people don't like people smarter than them.
Yeah,
it makes them mad. Same with a writer. You don't like Alan Moore. A lot of people don't like Alan Moore, and a lot of it is because it's just you feel like he's flexing his intellect on you all the time. It's like, oh,
it's not necessarily it's his writing or his stories that you don't like. You don't like the person.
Yeah, and that's the worst insult of all. Is they don't like you as a person. I don't mind the people that hate my work, but if you think I'm just a douchebag. I'm clearly doing something wrong if that comes through my writing. Like, because I've read things where I'm like, this author must be a fuckface.
Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling like that reading Casino Royale with Ian Fleming. It's like, he must have been a misogynistic dickhead. Anyway, we'll get to that later, folks. I'm not having a good time reading this Casino Royale. Spencer hasn't started. He's reading Slaughterhouse-5, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, and that go back to Styles.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
You're going time travel every other paragraph sometimes. So you're telling completely non-linear storytelling,
and we'll get into it in a future episode because that's gonna be the book is gonna be a topic, that's gonna be an episode later. But I'll just say the form of time travel in the book is interesting. For those who may not have read it yet.
Yes. So, sucking it back to end this episode, sucking it until, the Big Bang happened, but now we're bringing it back. We went back in time. Darn it. I don't know. Can you go back in time after the Big Bang? Is that possible?
Yeah.
They say time travel is possible, but isn't that all? You know what? I'm not getting into that. So, we got setting. We got character. We fleshed all that stuff out. We got the plot, and we got the narration style nailed. Where do we go from there? Pretty much probably finished book, I would say. We'll just say finished book, right? But now you're focusing on things like the cover art and stuff. This is where I feel...
We haven't even...
I'm just going to touch on this because it makes me very angry. I see it on the old internet a lot. I won't even name the site at this point. But I've seen a lot of independent writers... The first thing they focus... And again, I don't want to say anybody's wrong with the way they go about telling a story and everything... But if the fucking first thing you do is a cover design and a title, before you even come up with characters or a story idea, I think you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
Obviously there's outliers. There's people that could succeed in doing that. Maybe it works for them. That's how they get their ideas. I don't know. But I feel like I think you're just dicking around.
Yeah.
Like the people that come up with 50-page drawings of their characters and here's my character in a thong and come up with all this stupid shit. I feel like that's a way to avoid writing a story. And
it's busy work.
Yeah, and it's procrastination, I think. But I will say this: out of all those authors I see do that on a regular basis, I've never seen one of them actually come out with a book.
Yeah,
that book they always come up with the cover idea for, and this thing called aesthetic. I don't know if this is a mainstream thing or something. I just see a lot of indie authors do it, where they come up with I don't even know what it is, like a fucking collage or something of doodles. I don't know. It's supposed to be for their book or their story they're writing, but it's like cool, cutesy things that got words. Who cares? But they focus so hard on that stuff. It's like, are you writing the story, though?
Yeah.
Are you focusing on finishing the fucking book? No. Most of the cases I've seen, they have not finished the book. So I would say cover design for me would be dead last.
Yeah.
That's after editing. That's after everything. I'm not worried about the cover design. Unless for some reason that's how I came up with the idea for the story itself. It's like, ooh, it'd be a cool cover, and then you come up with the story.
Or as you're writing something, if you're writing a scene, you're like, oh, this could be a cool image to tell, and you want to write it down on a sticky note so you don't forget it later.
Again, there's nothing wrong with doing the cover at any point during writing process, but you should. The main thing is don't stop writing and never get back to it because you're too worried about the aesthetics of it.
That's like the textbook of cart before the horse kind of scenario.
I don't know why people do that. I feel, again, I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, you're not a real writer, but I feel like you're not even in the ballpark of giving a shit about writing if all you care about is the aesthetics of how it's going to look. And people do that with the actual writing too. I find this more in modern poetry. How... Oh.
Like the trimmings on the side of the pages and what the numbers are going to look.
I can't read fucking contemporary poetry because it pisses me off. Because a lot of it's really dulled down. Like, what's her name? Rupi Kaur or something? Like
nope.
You don't know, but
Nope.
It's shitty. She
Nope.
writes shitty poetry that girls love because, they can relate to having periods and stuff that she writes about. Which, again, I'm not shitting on the actual... I won't even shit on the actual poetry. It's the aesthetic, which she stole off of somebody else, by the way. I don't want to get into that either. But it's the aesthetic of... You can tell she focuses very hard on how it's going to look. And then puts it on, Instagram and stuff. She made $1 million or whatever from it, so obviously that worked out for her. But I don't like this idea of how is... like, people that come up with, I'm going to have a circle book. My book's going to be a circle, and then I'm going to have the layouts all crazy in it. Like, the paragraph lines are going to be different. Like, you're focused... like House of Leaves.
And I was just going to say, without reading it, it sounds like House of Leaves.
You focus so hard on the fucking design of it that you kind of half-ass the story. Like, focus on how the story... I mean, at least...
And then if within telling the story, if you can come up with a cool idea, like a few years ago, there was this Batman issue that they did where they had Batman got drugged and got put into this maze underground, and so he was getting lost. So they had him from one page was set up normal, and then when you turn to the next page, the page was like upside down, and then when you turn to the next page, it was different because it was a different way of telling like that story and its confusion and things like that.
House of Leaves did stuff with that with the fonts and the format, and that's fine. Like that's kind of cool. My problem is if that's like how you go into your story is I'm gonna do all this weird shit first, and I don't want to sound like an old head. I just think you should tell a good story first, and then you can do all that stuff. Now, for House of Leaves, obviously, he wanted to do fucking weird shit, and he has, like, mazes like that. He has mazes, so, like, the font's going to be laid out in zigzags and weird shit. So if he went into that, telling the story, and it would go with that, like, that's how he's telling the story, that's a little different. But when you just, like, ooh, I want my page to look like this, and then you're focusing on the layout and stuff, and then you're like, oh, I should probably tell a story here. It's just, I don't think it's going to be a good story if you do that. Like, story comes first. Always, I feel. Then again, what if you're writing a story that isn't a story? Because I've read work that's excellent. That's just, what was it? Kokoro by Natsume Saseki. It was a story about feeling. It wasn't really a story. It was just like the feeling of things. Like you're just, like this guy's in a mountain and you're just kind of experiencing the mountain with him. It's like a leisurely stroll. Very enjoyable read for me. I mean, I like that kind of stuff. But not really much of a plot or anything. You can tell stories like that, and that's fine. It's just, again, that goes back into what kind of story are you trying to tell? How are you going into it? What are you focusing on? We're like an hour in, so we should probably wrap this up.
A bit of a girthier episode than what we normally...
Well, we had like 10 minutes of talking about our failures, too, at the beginning. So, anything you would add?
I think we did a good job of
the elements of crafting a story. I don't know if we actually came up with I guess it would be the elements of crafting a story because we talked about the different parts of the story, and there's a lot more.
And I'm sure we'll tackle this topic in the future.
And there's a lot finer points, and I think in the future it'd be wise to break down each one. Yeah. So we talk about narration styles and make that the focus of the episode. Yeah. I just kind of wanted to get it out, just different ideas and things we could maybe think about. And
it's a good beginning of the year topic to start off the year and maybe start off your new story.
Right. But I will end this on this note, folks. Focus on that narration. How are you telling the story? That's very important. And a lot of people just kind of tell a story but don't think about how they're telling it. And what's the point of telling a story if it's just going to... It could be a cool story itself, like the plot and stuff, but if it sounds just like any generic story that somebody would tell you on the street, like, oh, this happened, then that happened, like, that's not very cool.
Yeah.
Like, you want the reader to have an experience. That's kind of why I don't like Hemingway that much. Because a lot of his story...
I thought you was a Hemingway guy.
I just read all his work, and it was just... I like The Old Man and the Sea. The other stuff I could take or leave. Leave. I wouldn't read it again. But it was just kind of very, this is what's happening, and that happens. But it didn't have a lot of style. He was very basic. Anyway, if you folks have other things you'd like to add to this, or want us to do an episode on a specific topic that we talked about, or think we're just wrong, whatever it is, you can reach out to us. You can email us. Our contact page is drunkenmenwriting.com. Also, our work is on there. You can go to the old Twitter at Drunk Pen Writing and harass us. You can go Facebook and Instagram at Drunken Pen Writing. And if you're not listening to this on YouTube, you can go to YouTube, where one day I'll actually make some more videos and put up. It's just very, very laborsome. That you're giving a big speech.
No.
No?
No.
What the fuck? You say you were giving a big speech?
No speech.
Weren't you giving a big speech about like redemption or some shit? Like,
no.
What the fuck are we? Oh man. Well, now we just got dead air.
Well, what do I know about redemption?
I don't know. I thought you were gonna have to talk about your redemption arc.
I don't know. I don't
Did
know.
you just say you were like living in the gutter, and then all of a sudden you rose up like the phoenix out of the ashes?
No.
That wasn't you?
No.
I'm sure as hell wasn't me. Who was that? Are we still spiraling around in outer space? Are we just fucking in the void again? For the folks who haven't listened to episode, we talked about. You know what? Fuck it. So anyway, I was drinking a can of. No, you know what? No, I can't do that because I ended the last episode on a screaming surge. No, just gonna keep talking.
Maybe you should stop talking.
I could hit. All I could do is hit the space bar, and this is done. Just hit. I'm caressing the space bar. I know you want to get out of this hot basement.